Everyone, and good evening from wherever you are as well. To our distinguished speakers and to our media friends here, and welcome to the press briefing. Myanmar attempted coup 1 year on. ASEAN must not fail its own people. So this briefing is organized by Forum Asia, Civicus, Contrast, ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights, Progressive Voice, and Asia Justice and Rights, or AJAR, to show solidarity and to remind ASEAN that we as an ASEAN people are not forgetting our friends in Myanmar, and will keep asking for accountability and for justice to be upheld for our people, our friends in Myanmar. And ahead of the first year since the attempted coup in Myanmar, we are holding this media briefing to remind the ASEAN member states, its leader, and the whole ASEAN community that the regional bloc's failure to hold the junta accountable cannot be no longer tolerated. And then we need to go together to ask ASEAN and international community to do something, concrete actions to really stop the atrocities committed by the junta. So before starting the media briefing, I would like to introduce myself first. My name is Cornelius Hanung from Civicus. I'm going to be your moderator for today. And just to remind you that this webinar or this press briefing have an interpretation service in Bahasa Indonesia and English. So if you're comfortable to hearing in Bahasa Indonesia, you may choose the interpretations button and choose Bahasa Indonesia to hear our interpreter. And to kick off our media briefing today, I would like to invite Joy Ichayan, Program Officer of East Asia and ASEAN Program from Forum Asia, on behalf of the organizer, to give the welcoming remarks. Joy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hanu, and welcome to Myanmar attempted coup 1 year on. ASEAN must not fail its peoples. Just speaking on behalf of the organizers that Hanu has kindly mentioned, Forum Asia, AJAR, Civicus, EBHR, contrast, and progressive voice. So it's been a year since the military's attempted coup in Myanmar. And since then, these organizations have individually and collectively called on ASEAN and the international community to act on this worsening human rights and humanitarian crisis. We have observed that while ASEAN has taken some steps, these steps have continued to be insufficient to address this crisis. Meanwhile, we have seen how people have continuously suffered and how the historical injustices against the Rohingya and the ethnic communities and minorities continue to be committed without accountability. In this press briefing, key voices from the region speaking on Myanmar will discuss how the situation has evolved and escalated and what needs to happen next, and what we need ASEAN and the international community to do. We have here defenders from Myanmar, Indonesia, and from the National Unity Government. They will talk about these next steps and their own recommendations to the international community and to the ASEAN member states. As human rights organizations in Asia, we also continue to call on the international community to address these violations. It's also a call for continued solidarity among civil society in the region, and as a reminder that the events in Myanmar have wide-ranging implications, not just in the region, but also globally. We must continue to move towards finding effective and rights-based solutions to find accountability. And with that, I think it's best to hear from our esteemed voices, and over to you, Hanno. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Joy. Before I introduce you to all of our speakers, distinguished speakers today, just to remind you that this media briefing is also being live streamed in YouTube and Facebook and Twitter of Forum Asia. So if you'd like to share the link of the live stream for those who perhaps couldn't registered in time to join us here in Zoom, please feel free to do so. Now I would like to introduce you to our distinguished speakers today, who's representing the voice of Myanmar people, but also the voice from civil society and members of parliaments in Indonesia together to show solidarity. Our first speaker is His Excellency Ambassador Ugo Latin. He was appointed as the National Unity Government Ambassador for ASEAN by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs on 24 October 2021. And he was also Foreign Affairs Minister for the National Coalition Government of the Union of Burma. Her Excellency will talk about the NUG's positions and current advocacy that they're conducting in order to ask for legitimacy from the international community. And then our second speaker will be Ms. Kin Omar. She's the founder and chair of Progressive Voice, which is a participatory rights-based policy research and advocacy organizations rooted in civil society. And the organization has maintained a very strong networks and relationship with the grassroots organizations and community-based organizations throughout Myanmar. She herself is a very prominent activist who has been involved in pro-democracy movement in Myanmar for more than decades. And we also are very humbled to be joined by Ms. Hannah Mo, who is the member of Secretariat of Karani State Consultative Council. Together with Ms. Kin Omar, they will be speaking about the updates on the situation on the ground and how it has been worsening since the enactment of the ASEAN 5-point consensus, and then the inability of ASEAN to actually tackle the problems on the ground. And then we also joined by Ms. Fatia Maulidianti. She's a very well-known women human rights defender and currently the coordinator of the Commission for the Disappeared and Victims of Violence, or CONTRAST. She has also been involved in various civil society movements since the university and student press, working on various human rights issues such as death penalty, business and human rights, unfair trial, human rights defenders, and human rights and conflict. She'll be speaking about what are the solidarity messages and efforts that have been conducted by CSOs in Indonesia since the coup, the attempted coup happened in Myanmar on the 1st of February 2021. And then last but not least, we are also humbled joined by Ibu Eva Sundari. She's a former member of the House of Representatives in Indonesia and currently board member of the ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights. And she was a member of parliament from 2004 to 2019. And in 2009 to 2014, she was the president of the AIPMC, or ASEAN Member of Parliament's Caucus for Myanmar. And she's also a founder and president of APHR from 2014 to 2016, and was in Commission for Law and Human Rights from 2004 to 2014 as well. So each speaker will be speaking for 12 minutes, and then right after the session, we will have Q&A sessions from the participants. And for the participants who would like to speak or would like to ask questions, we have the Q&A feature in the Zoom. You may put your question there, or you can use raise hand feature later on when the Q&A session is open. So without further ado, I would like to give the first opportunity for His Excellency Sir Ubo Latin, the Ambassador of the NUG to ASEAN, to brief us about his insight in this matter. Ubo, the floor is yours. Ubo, I think you're still in mute.
It's okay now?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanan, and Joanne, and everybody who make this very crucial press briefing happen at this very crucial moment for our country. I really appreciate it. And dear member of the press, ladies and gentlemen, friends of Burma, thank you for allowing me to speak out to you all today. As the NUG ambassador to ASEAN, allow me to take this opportunity to express our deep appreciation to all effort made by the Indonesia government and other like-minded members of ASEAN and CSOs in Jakarta and in the region, in solidarity with our people struggling to end the military dictatorship and restorations of democracy and human dignity in Myanmar. I believe that this series of activities taking place here in Jakarta will lead better mutual understanding and more opening for closer working relation between the NUG and Indonesia vis-a-vis with ASEAN leadership. I also would like to take this opportunity to send a message that the NUG as a legitimate government of the people of Myanmar is willing, committed, and ready to establish bilateral relation with fellow member nations of ASEAN, as well as a multilateral relation with the ASEAN leadership. The attempted coup, military coup on February 1st last year, which overthrown the democratically elected civilian government and declared 2 years emergency against the will of the people, clearly expressed through the 2020 elections, trigger very strong public anger and is the primary source of the all deepening human tragedy in our country today. Facing strong public rejection and international response without gaining the power it would like to seize, the military junta launched very furious military crackdown against the nationwide peaceful protests, CDM, and political opposition. Since then, we all witness all form of atrocity up to the level of crime against humanity and war crimes targeted to the civilian population. As of today, 1,499 people, including children, elderly, and women, were brutally killed. 11,810 people were arbitrarily arrested, and another 19,067 people were wanted to arrest. Hundreds of thousands of people were displaced due to the intensifying military offensive, and tens of thousands of people taking refuge into neighboring countries like Thailand and India I believe that my fellow speaker will elaborate on that subject. Another point I'd like to make is the abhorrent military attempted coup is also undermine the purposes of ASEAN clearly stated in Article 1 of the ASEAN Charter, specifically that number 1 and number 7. Number 1 said to maintain and enhance peace, security, and stability, and further strengthening peace-oriented value in the region. Number 7, to strengthen democracy, enhance good governance and the rule of law, and to promote and protect human rights and individual freedoms with due to rights and responsibility of due regard to rights and responsibility of member state of ASEAN. So we want ASEAN leadership to firmly stand in unity in accordance with those principles and purposes outlined in the ASEAN Charter, especially in the area mentioned above. So when they find or help finding the valuable solution to stop all the violence, alleviate suffering from the humanitarian emergencies, and to restoring democracy in our country. Our people expected when that ASEAN will go step by step when ASEAN invited Myanmar as a head of the military council and pushed for the 5-point consensus through the ASEAN leadership in late April 2021. And they were very encouraged when the ASEAN leadership took unprecedented action in mid-October, rejecting participation of the men online in the leadership summit due to his failure to work with the ASEAN as well as to work with the ASEAN special envoy according to the 5-point consensus. Our people hope that ASEAN will gradually open opportunity for the NUG to work with the working relation with as the key party concerned. But since then, there were no more effective measures taken by the ASEAN, UN, or international community in response to the junta continue reign of terror with heinous crimes against humanity and repeated violation to the 5-point consensus. 54 million of our people deeply disappointed in their hope that ASEAN will help them achieve their aspiration for democracy. As an envoy to ASEAN, my responsibility now is to try my best to restore the positive relation between our people and the ASEAN, which is now facing internal challenges such as unilateral initiative without proper prior consultation among the member states, especially under the new chairmanship of the Cambodia. We simply believe that 2022 is very crucial year for our country, ASEAN, and the international community in support of the centrality role of ASEAN to be more proactive, practical, and result-oriented by revisiting the 5-point consensus and find more comprehensive alternative for the sake of meaningful progress in our country. The consequences of not acting are too horrific and damaging to the vision we share with Indonesia and other like-minded members of ASEAN as expressed in the Charter of ASEAN. Under these circumstances, it is, as the terrorized activities of the junta is allowed to go ahead without any check. It is very difficult to have comprehensive and political consideration on how to address a conducive atmosphere for the inclusive dialogue process and building political trust among all parties concerned. In our view, unconditional release of all political prisoners, including President Wu Min and State Councilor Aung San Suu Kyi, freedom of expression, association, and press must be guaranteed. Brutal military offenses across the nation, and violence and atrocity must be stopped. Safe and sound return of all refugees and internally displaced people to their respective places must also be guaranteed. An effective humanitarian assistance delivery system, which will be able to reach the most vulnerable population without discrimination, must be implemented. In our view, the AHA Center alone will not be able to perform its duty since it was established to respond to natural disaster, not for very complex situation like in our country today. The ASEAN leadership should take initiative for creation of viable trial mechanisms such as ASEAN plus dialogue partner plus UN agency, and fully cooperate with the UN Special Envoy and the NUG. Since we have already established a well-coordinated COVID-19 and public health assistance task force among the all relevant NUG ministries, EAOs, and local CSOs, and confidently delivering cross-border humanitarian assistance to the neediest populations. We want the ASEAN leadership to consider it as an alternative for an effective humanitarian delivery system in those areas. The junta must also agree to take accountability for crime against humanity since the coup, and justice must be served. So these are all these preconditions we all would like to see under the initiative for ASEAN leadership as a centrality role. We want ASEAN and the international community also to seriously consider the demand of the nationwide peaceful protests inside and out of Myanmar for freedom, justice, equality, and human dignity as the foundation of the restoration of democracy in our country. Even though they have spent last year sacrificing a lot of lives in defiance of ruthless military juntas and facing multidimensional difficulties and challenges, the morale of our people stay resolute to end the military dictatorship and to march with confidence towards a democratic federal union. With that strong and unwavering support by our people, we, the NUG, are determined to try our best to engage with ASEAN until we gain our rightful place and full cooperation as a legitimate government of the people of Myanmar. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ugo Latin, for your point and recommendations from NUGs to ASEAN international communities, which also include the release of political prisoners, effective humanitarian assistance, and the commitment from NUG as well to be recognized by the international community and to work together with the international community and ASEAN, particularly to bring changes in the situation of Myanmar. Next, I would like to head over to Ms. Kinomar, who is the chair and founder of Progressive Voice, who is going to give us the updates on the situations at this point, nearing the 1 year of coup. Maomar, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Hanong. Good morning and selamat pagi to all our Indonesian friends. Thank you for joining us in this press briefing. Indonesia is not a stranger to me as a veteran Burmese activist, as I have made uncountable trips to Indonesia in the past decades, 2 decades, engaging with members of parliament, including Ibu Eva, and also civil society colleagues in solidarity, such as friends from Contras, calling for support to Myanmar people's struggle for democracy and to hold the Myanmar military to account. I also met countless times with the Indonesian media as well during my trips. So thanks to those of you who are joining us also today. You have all along supported our people's struggle throughout the past decades, and I can never thank you enough for that. So yes, this is not the first time coming to you to share with you the update and also to seek for your support from Indonesian people and also particularly also from the Indonesian government. But I'm particularly grateful for today's opportunity to brief you and update you the crisis happening in Myanmar. It's because our people are about to mark 1 year of their revolution that they call Spring Revolution. They started about in February last year as the military started launching their coup attempt. Our people's staunch resistance and defiance to this military's bloody coup attempt has been extraordinary. Someone like me, who actually was one of the student activists back in 1988, mobilizing the nationwide democracy uprising, for me, even for me to see where our people are at this point, the young generation, the previous generations, combined democratic forces together to topple this military junta or the military dictatorship is something that we have never seen in the country. And tomorrow, February 1, with all the losses of life and the heroes and heroines who gave up their lives and everything for the revolution to topple this military junta, but also this is the time that our people will be celebrating of their resistance and defiance against this murderous military junta. So to mark this revolution, there are already demonstrations, street demonstrations are happening, including in the former capital Yangon, as you will see the virtual background photo behind me, as well as in many other parts of the country in the country right now. So our people are so determined to achieve democracy and continue to reject the military categorically. But what we are also seeing is also the military has come to be weak and desperate, but also because they are so desperate, this is the first time in their military's history and lifetime that they have faced the largest people's resistance. And in retaliation or in response, they become to be also very ruthless, become totally barbaric, and like oppressing. This killing machine is now, they are so using this extreme violence towards the people. It's a terror campaign across the country is happening. And what they are really trying to do is to try to instill fear using this extreme violence. But something that they come to probably see by now is also from the actions and the fact on the ground is that the more violence they are using, the more Myanmar people come to be determined, the young people come to be stronger in their defiance against this military. As of January 28th, the military has killed already at least 2,164 people. Ubu, our ambassador, shared with you the number, but these are the number that Ambassador Ubu Ladin shared is the number of those who were killed during the demonstrations and protests. But I have given you a few hundred more number of people who were killed are the civilians, children, including children, who were actually killed by the military's fierce attacks, such as the airstrikes and ground mortar shellings. These people, more than 2,100 who've been killed, include at least 100 children and more than 100 women as well. The junta they have arrested almost 12,000 people, but about more or less 9,000 are still in detention. Torture is common and severe, that these activists in detention are facing this torture. They are subjected, but particularly the women and LGBTIQ activists are subjected to sexual violence and sexual assault during the detention. Their continuous terrorist attacks have created also a dire humanitarian crisis that is once again deeply affecting neighboring countries like Thailand, for example. Of course, the spillover effects from Myanmar are not new to Indonesia as well, as you have already been receiving most vulnerable Rohingya refugees from Myanmar in your country, as the Rohingya community faced the genocide committed by this military in 2017. The junta is waging an all-out war against the people, particularly fiercely in the ethnic Karen Karani, Chin Shan, and Kachin states in eastern and western frontiers, as well as Sagaing and Magui region in Upper Myanmar. There were already more than 7,500 armed clashes and attacks on civilians from February last year to December. Even in the last 4 months of the 2021, the attacks against targeting the civilians are comparable or even greater than incidents in Afghanistan, Iraq, or Syria, where the human rights and humanitarian crises are already unfolding on, like putting on the Security Council agenda. This military junta is committing crimes against humanity and war crimes. Let's not make a mistake about that. Raiding and burning villages to ash, using villages as human shields and potters, committing massacres, burning bodies, raping and torturing innocent people, including the children, and using helicopters and jet fighters to attack the villages and even the internally displaced people's camps, killing children. Many of these attacks echo the past crimes this same military committed against other ethnic minorities, as well as also the Rohingya in 2017. In recent months, the junta's offensives involved the fierce airstrikes and civilian areas. And my colleague Hanamu will speak on the situation in her homeland in Karenni state. But I also want to share with you that in Karen state, there are also airstrikes for the last month and carrying on that already forced more than 50,000 people in Karen state to Thailand side of the border, but the people are not able to take the shelter or the safety on Thailand side because the Thai government is not allowing the people to take the shelter in their home on Thailand side. So it's been very challenging for the people that they've been pushed back to the areas where the conflict is ongoing. While many have taken refuge in Thailand, but the shells, mortars also come into the Thailand side. So what I want to share with you here is that this Myanmar military junta's attacks on the civilians within Myanmar is not only within Myanmar, but also it has become opposed to the threat to the regional peace and security. Yeah, and I also want to share that the Myanmar spills over, the problems from Myanmar in the region is not new to any of us here. That has been in the past. There are many of these tens of thousands of people had to flee. So before the coup attempt, there were already 340,000 protracted displacement people who have been displaced for a long time. But now, since the coup attempt, another 320,000 people become internally displaced, forced out from their homes, villages, and cities, from towns. And we also have at least 90,000 refugees in the refugee camps on Thailand side, about 800,000 refugees, Rohingya refugees on Bangladesh border, and thousands more in Malaysia, while also Indonesia receiving the Rohingya refugees. So the point here that I want to make is that if ASEAN does not address this long human tragedy of Myanmar without addressing the root cause this time, the root cause, which is the Myanmar military, I don't know when and how the ASEAN will move on or address or resolve the Myanmar crisis without addressing the Myanmar militaries and to end their impunity. ASEAN must come to terms that working with the Myanmar military is not going to bring any solution for the Myanmar, but also not for the ASEAN as a whole region. I also want to say that on the ground inside the country, the humanitarian situation is coming to be very, very severe. So what is so worrying is under these conditions, the military continues to weaponize humanitarian aid and also COVID-19 for their political gain. I want to say that what we need is the ASEAN and the UN to negotiate with the Thai government to open the humanitarian corridor on the border, but also to really work together for the humanitarian intervention. The ASEAN 5-point consensus has failed already. Keep working on it, knowingly that has failed the people of Myanmar, not able to save the people on the ground. It's going to do further harm to our people. So what we really need is for ASEAN to find alternative solution together with the like-minded actors, including in ASEAN as well as in the international community. And what we really, really need is for Indonesian government to take the lead. The Indonesian Foreign Minister, Ibu Retno, said since the beginning, Indonesia's priority when it comes to Myanmar is the well-being of Myanmar people. Myanmar is now at war. Large number of casualties from the military already on the site. The whole country is in a conflict. The young people are not going to give up. What we really need is the Indonesia to take the lead, to really show the leadership and just work with the national unity government and with the people of Myanmar. And this is the only way for us to bring the solution and to move forward. I remember that so well of this message from the foreign minister. And I really, really hope that Indonesia, we look up to you. You are the largest democracy in the region. And we hope that you will save you will save Myanmar. My last point, we want ASEAN member states to actually ban all the foreign ships, foreign airplanes who are actually to ban all of these international foreign aircrafts or ships using their airspace, airports or marine boundaries in bringing arms and munitions and jet fuel transport to the Myanmar military. Because this is the immediate thing that individual countries can do. This will save so many lives of the people on the ground. I look forward to Ibu Retno's leadership for this immediate action as well. Thank you. Thanks, Hanong, back to you.
Thank you very much, Malmar, for giving us the updates on the situation and how the resistance on the ground keep getting stronger, even though the junta is even getting more violence. And now it's not the time for ASEAN to issue another statements or to discuss. It's time for do real actions, do alternative actions with the international community together and not engaging with the junta, which is we can come back later during the Q&A sessions to deliberate more on this. Next speaker, we're very much humbled to be joined by Hannah Mo, which is the member of Secretariat of Karenni State Consultative Council, who's joining us today despite of the risk that he might encounter, to give us information about the situations in the Karenni states and what the international community can do to address this. Hannah, the floor is yours.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone who joined the event, and especially the organizers that letting me part of the event. Thank you so much. So this is my apology that I'm not able to show up my video according to my security concern. I hope everyone will understand on me. So today my message will be focusing on especially the situation of Karenni State. Karenni State is the smallest ethnic state in Burma, and it has only the population of 300,000 people, and it is located in the eastern part of Burma, and it's bordering with Thailand. So most of our state's population identify themselves as an indigenous Karenni. Under Karenni, we have several sub-ethnic cities. Over 70 years, the Myanmar military has pursued a civil war against the ethnic armed groups who fight against them to protect its people. During that period, the terrorists already attacked and forced a lot of our people, fleeing to Thailand border. So it's a kind of the we have been suffering that kind of terrorism by the military for decades. But we had the belief that the military could change one day, or peace would come one day. But these were our mistaken belief that we had in the past. Now, so when the military coup attempt again in 1st of February in Ukraine, thousands of people came to the street and showing that they are against the military rule again in Burma. So almost every civil servant in our state joined the civil disobedience movement. And one thing is very high, I would like to highlight that there are about 62% of the state police force joined in the civil disobedience movement. It's a very historical movement that Ukraine had ever in his history. Nowadays, it became the Ukrainian state police force. It's a very taking big role for the community to protect the people's rights nowadays. So what happened in the protest? The peaceful protests include every sections of civil societies, including the government staff, farmers, workers, students, women, and youth. But the military soon turned its violence and cracking down the peaceful protest, and then they behave like a terrorist, as they did in the past. In our peaceful demonstration, they arrested us, they killed us, and they tortured us. They have done a lot during the previous months. The previous months, they killed a lot of our people in the demonstrations. They arrested hundreds of people in Ukraine state. By having such exalted all the non-violence means, our people just have to took up arms and join the ethnic armed groups to defend ourselves from the military terrorists. It's happened in the demonstration period. On the other hand, with the cooperation with the NUCC and NUG, Ukrainian people could establish a new state leadership body, which is called Ukrainian State Consultative Council. And it's a very inclusively formed with the ethnic armed groups and political parties, CSOs, newly elected MPs, women and youth. We can say that that body is very inclusive in Ukraine. So we are standing for our Ukraine by collaborating with the NUCC and NUG. And KSCC has shared vision to build a federal democracy and restore peace in Burma. KSCC has set up several committees to implement the essential services for our people, including the policing, education, health, and public administration too. But on 24th December, all around the world noticed that the military committed very, crime against humanity case on 24th December. It case shocked the international community. Now, by committing the brutal and human burning attack on the 49 innocent civilians in Prosu Township in Ukraine, it's a crime against humanity. Later, on January 6, they began airstrikes every day, not only to the armed revolution groups. The airstrikes targeted to IDP camps and innocent people. On 17 January, very early in the morning, the airstrikes killed 3 IDPs, including children who are under 15. It's very sad. Early in the morning, while people are sleeping, they attacked by the airstrikes and they killed innocent people. Day by day, the airstrikes increase. So what happening in Karenni? Our people have to dig their bunkers. They have to stay in the bunkers without any proper shelters, even blankets they do not have. They have to stay in the bunkers. At the same time, they have started very, very major offensive in the capital, in the Karenni, which is called Loiko town. It's the capital city of the Karenni state. So they have started airstrike in the town too, and they have been doing. They continue doing, killing people in town, and torturing, arresting, and even destroying our homes and our properties. Even in towns, they continue to attack the civilians. Yeah. So today, the military have forcibly displaced over our half of our population. You know that we have only 300,000 population, but more than half of our population become IDPs at the movement. Now, over 200 Ukrainian civilians were imprisoned, and over 140 civilians are killed. And then the latest news about the 500 houses were burned down already to the ground, including the churches and religious buildings. So all these, the very brutal actions by the military is a part of their 4 cuts military strategy. The 4 cuts military strategy is very popular that the military has used for decades, denying our people food, funds, intelligence, and recruits. It's really affect our people. It's very painful. We are going to start everything out soon. Now, we know that to go to the Thailand side, which is safer, but it takes about 8 days to walk to the Thailand border. So no idea that only more IDPs flee to the jungle instead of going to the Thai border. The jungle in the west of Karenni state, it is a very dangerous zone that the airstrikes is targeting. So in the jungle, they face the shortage of food, petrol, and basic medicines. Everything they face the shortage. When we look at the UN agency and the international humanitarian organization, they are not much able to do. Their actions are strictly prohibited to support the IDPs. So KSCC and the local CSOs are addressing the humanitarian emergencies as much as they can. Even there, in hiding, people are not safe. People are not safe. So the military airstrikes also target into the IDP camps. If their clearance operation continue, it is sure that we will lose many of our Ukrainian very soon. But our Ukrainian people believe that even though we are suffering, we are running, we are crying, but Ukrainian people believe that we are winning soon. We are winning soon. We will get the victory very soon. And we are not going back to the dictatorship. So this is our belief, but our belief and our strength is not enough. So we need the international community help too. So by saying that, in my conclusion, by saying to the ASEAN community that I would like to conclude my message. The ASEAN community must act strategically to limit the ability of Myanmar military to terrorize. Beyond the condemning the legitimate coup d'etat, all the cooperation with the military terrorists need to end to prevent further atrocity against innocent civilians in Burma. we need to consider some important actions. Like, firstly, we need to title Myanmar military as a terrorist object and cease all the international cooperation. Secondly, we need to recognize the National Unity Government as the legitimate government of Myanmar at the United Nations and ASEAN too. Thirdly, we direct further target sanctions on sectors belonging to the military's terrorist activities, especially MOGE and the aviation fuel. And fourthly, it's very important that we need to ask our neighbor Thailand to provide a channel for humanitarian aid through its cross-border, and Thailand needs to provide a safe passage for our refugees. And finally, I would like to ask respectfully to Indonesian government to continue taking leadership in ASEAN to stop the military violence and resolve the crisis for the well-being of people in Myanmar and for establishing federal democracy in Burma. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Hanamo, for your message, which is very dire situation happening in current states. And we really appreciate you to be here to share this with us and to share with this with the Indonesian CSOs press in Indonesia and also the government of Indonesia. We can also hear this about how bad the situation is on the ground and how desperate we all really need to see like concrete actions from all community involved. Thank you so much, Ms. Hanamo, for this. Moving on, I would like to invite Ms. Fatia Maulidianti, coordinator for Contrast, just a very well-known CSO in Indonesia, focusing on human rights. And I know that Contrast have also been working tirelessly as well on mobilizing solidarity here in Indonesia in relation to the situations on Myanmar. Fatia, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Hanung, for the opportunity, and thank you for inviting Contrast as one of the solidarity movement for the issue in Myanmar. And good morning for Ambassador Yubo and then Omar and then also Hannah. Firstly, I would like to say that the situation in Myanmar is actually one of the greatest failure, I think, from the ASEAN, because the government of ASEAN is still not really having a very firm action related to the situation in Myanmar itself, because we know that in ASEAN, we see that a lot of things happen in several years right now, and Myanmar is one of the greatest problems that we have, and we need to find some kind of solution and movement from the people around ASEAN as a communal movement that we are building together. And I saw some updates of news that clearly saying about the cybersecurity law as well that been raising in Myanmar. And this could be used as a tool to actually silencing the people to protesting or dissenting related to the issue of freedom of expression. And this issue is actually pretty much the same with what happened in Indonesia with the electronic information and transaction law. And when we see that actually a lot of tools or like a legislation process is being established to actually pushing down or even reducing the freedom of the people itself. And we see that a lot of aspects here is actually very repressive to the freedom of expression for the Myanmar people, because the social media and then also the use of VPN and then blocking social media is one of the problems that could raise if the cybersecurity law being enacted. And this is actually the same with the issue in Indonesia with the ITE law, when the people is actually really rely on the technology itself to raise their expression. And during the pandemic, it is also very comprehensive if we could talk more to the people by the digital media, because we are really depend on that, because we cannot go to the street like we used to. So those kind of tools of a legislation or like a law is actually being used by the government right now, not only in Indonesia, but I think in some of the countries in Asia, to actually pushing down the people itself. So if we compare to the past, we see that the repressive acts or like the violence perpetrated by the state usually not being legitimized by the law itself. But right now, the situation has been changing, and the government use and creating those kind of laws to actually repress those people who actually protesting the government. So related to the issue for solidarity from Indonesian people to Myanmar, Contrast has been really actively involved with the other organizations as well, like Ajar, Suaka, and others, to actually tackling down or even like advocating the issue related to the refugees issue, and then also the freedom of expression, and how actually rejecting the military junta to come to Indonesia during the ASEAN summit. We do people's mobilization here with a bike for Myanmar in last year. And then also several advocacy movements prepared by Contrast and other organizations as well to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, to actually pushing them to do something about the situation in Myanmar, because we know that Indonesia is having a very strong position in amongst the ASEAN member states. We know that Indonesia have been stating several statements on behalf of the government related to the military coup in Myanmar. But apparently there are no firm or like a very strategic approach from the Indonesian government to halt the situation or the military coup in Myanmar. So I don't think that some of the strategy or the statement that came from the Indonesian government is really effective right now. So we have to keep advocating the issue of Myanmar together with the other Indonesian people as well. But on the other hand as well, we try to do some kind of approach for lobby with the public figures here, with the human rights figures, so they can also approach the government to do something from the, for example, from the parliamentarian side, and then also from the ministerial side as well. So this situation in Myanmar can be stopped and can become one of the benchmark for the ASEAN to actually having some kind of a settlement from the issue of gross human rights violations that can become one of the like a benchmark for the other settlements in the other countries in ASEAN, because we know we have the similar history of impunity that is still not being settled by our governments. And the last one is actually we try to do a lot of like a youth mobilization as well with the youth community. One of our colleague here from Ajar as well, having a lot of contact with the Milk Tea Alliance, and youth community could become one of our power as well, actually like a modality to actually pushing the government, not only in Indonesia, but also all over ASEAN, I think, to have like a similar communal solidarity movement. And usually youth movement is really more popular rather than we do some kind of advocacy, and it could become like a simultaneous effect to pushing all the government in ASEAN, because I think the situation in Myanmar is not only about the Myanmar itself, but it's also about the situation in ASEAN, that we have the similar history of violence that's still not being settled. And that's why we can make this issue in Myanmar as an entry point for us to actually move together as an ASEAN community, not only to just, raising the flags of, oh, ASEAN is a very diverse region, etc., but also to actually demanding the government about the situation or the settlement of the human rights violation itself, and how the government actually could tackle the impunity that happened in ASEAN. And we know that this situation is really concerning, and a lot of the youth community having a lot of potential as well to actually raising their voices related to their partners or their colleagues in Myanmar community as well, that mostly also a youth movement as well, that being as a victims of those violence in military coup in Myanmar. So hopefully that Contrast could become one of the hub for the solidarity movement from the CSO in Indonesia, and we will still continue the efforts and then do the advocacy and solidarity for campaign for Myanmar as well. Thank you very much. Maybe that's all from me, Hanung.
Thank you very much, Fatia, for the presentation related to this, what has been done by the CSOs in Indonesia, and reiterating the commitment as well to become the hub for Indonesian civil society to show solidarity in Myanmar, and the importance for the people, particularly youth, in entire ASEAN as well, to stand together to address these issues, not only for Indonesia, youth in Indonesia, but also youth in ASEAN, but particularly important for Indonesia since it's going to assume the ASEAN chairship in 2023, which is last year, which is very crucial for us as well. Lastly, we have our last speaker, Ibu Eva Sundari, who is the former member of parliament, but currently board member of the ASEAN Parliamentarian for Human Rights, to speak and give her insights on what the member of parliaments and the government, particularly in Indonesia, can do to address the situations. Ibu Eva, the floor is yours, and thank you so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you, Mas Hanung. Dear friends, this is a very important occasion, and I promise to do very shortly. As a former member of the Indonesian House of Representatives, I have had the privilege of working on the human rights situation in Myanmar for many years, since 2007. So I visited also a refugee camp. I also visited Aung San Suu Kyi in the house arrest, and also helped some MPs in exile, including Kim Omtar at that time, to organize meetings in Komnas HAM at that time. And of course, after that, I also helped some youth that have been brought by contrast to the parliament and discuss many important things for the youth at that time. So more than ever, the role of ASEAN and the role of Indonesia are absolutely critical to create of a space for the Myanmar people to get the chance they deserve to achieve a democratic and federal union. Indeed, the Indonesian governments, the president and also foreign ministers, leaderships on the crisis so far are to be appreciated and supported to continue in the same time. And I have heard, and also IPSR also received many calls from not only from Myanmar, but from all of places in ASEAN, asking for more greater rules of Indonesia. So besides the criticism, which is also strong from inside, nevertheless, they think Indonesia still a hope for ASEAN to remain on the right track and also to maintain the democracy in our region here. In October, APSR was encouraged by the ASEAN Foreign Minister decisions to exclude Myanmar's military chief from the ASEAN's leaders meeting. This is the ones that really a fresh air for us at the time. This was an unprecedented move that has sent the important message to the world that ASEAN is serious about holding Senior General Min Aung Hlaing to the 5 points consensus reached in the Jakarta in April last year. We recognize this important step in the ASEAN context, however, noted that much more needs to be done. At the time, we called on ASEAN and its dialogue partners to build on these important initial steps and continue to press Myanmar's junta to take concrete measures to progress the 5 points consensus. A few months on, and increasingly we fear that the 5 points consensus is actually becoming a distraction from actually starting the hard and tough negotiating that the Myanmar people, ASEAN, and the international community needs to do to end the terrible violence and address the root causes of the conflict. While there has been a lot of diplomatic activity around Cambodia taking over the chair of ASEAN and attempting his unilateral diplomacy or rough diplomacy, we note that there has been no further progress. Indeed, despite Hun Sen's trip to Myanmar and his video calls last week, the conflict continues and the Myanmar junta has been escalating the intensity of its attacks on unarmed civilians populations. I say again, so that we are under no illusions. There has been absolutely no progress since the coup a year ago to improve the sufferings of the people at the hands of military, in spite of all this diplomatic and political activity. Most to blame is the Myanmar military, but they have been allowed to do this. Nevertheless, a year since the attempted coup took place, the military still doesn't control does not control the whole of the country. The people remain strong. This is really that encourages us also to continue our help and interventions for the people itself, because they show us very strong spirit to continue the struggle. The youth and civil society of Myanmar have gained the admirations of the world in their fight against the odds. It is a year in which the most gruesome atrocities have taken place within our regions and with complete impunity. It is a matter that deserves some serious considerations, even more so because the rest of the world is looking to ASEAN to provide leadership on this totally unnecessary conflict. ASEAN's credibility depends on its ability to act decisively and bring the Myanmar military junta to end its relentless campaigns of violence against the people of Myanmar. It is the interest of ASEAN governments for ASEAN centrality to be credible through taking decisive actions to back up its agreements. A lack of decisiveness and consequences for the military's total contempt for the ASEAN leaders' agreements risk undermining the bloc's legitimacy as a key regional player that can bring peace and stability. Thus, as an urgent step towards pushing the junta to end the catastrophe, it is visiting on its people. We urge ASEAN and its individual members, especially Indonesia, as the most influential member, to take the following actions. First, immediately meet officially and publicly with representatives of National Unity Governments, NUG, and open dialogue with them. Yes, we encourage it, and we did it exactly the same things when we handled the first coup in back 10 years ago. So we always maintains the contacts with MPs in exile, but this time is of course the NUG. There is no reasons to delay this any longer. They have expressed their appreciations of ASEAN diplomacy and openness to constructive dialogues with ASEAN. They are the democratically elected representatives of the people of Myanmar. Second, stop inviting any other junta representatives to ASEAN's official meetings until there is an end to violence. All political prisoners are free and the country is returns on the path of democracy. We note that ASEAN's foreign ministers' meetings has been rescheduled. It should be made very clear if the Myanmar junta has been invited to represent the countries and why. Further, we seek from ASEAN members on its decisions to allow a non-political representative to take the seat at ASEAN's meeting. While this seems to indicate that member of Myanmar civil service take the seat, we consider it doubtfully that any candidate who continues to work for the junta and has not joined the civil disobedience movement is not obedient and obligated to junta. It is essential to keep in mind that it is the Myanmar military's own actions that are creating the current humanitarian crisis engulfing the country. We urge ASEAN members to move swiftly to take the necessary steps to alleviate the humanitarian emergency across Myanmar. Thailand, in particular, must be supported to respond to the movements of refugees in accordance with human rights. That is, by providing humanitarian assistance and allowing people to seek asylum. Myanmar junta's leaders are in danger the stability, prosperity, peace, and the health of the regions. Your failure to act normalizes the junta atrocities against its own people. As elsewhere, encourage to take similar actions in the future if and sense that is the Myanmar people have made it clear that kind of future they want. Have a recipe and opportunity to choose side of our country's wishes to back. I think I will end it now by saying that let us make the right choice for peace, justice, and freedoms that will benefit all of us, especially people in regions and also in Myanmar. Thank you, Mas Hanu.
Thank you very much, Weva, for your presentations. Now we have 10 minutes to have Q&A sessions. So for those who would like to ask questions, you may use raise hand feature or Q&A feature here. And while waiting for perhaps people to raise their hand, I can just look at the chat box at the moment. There are some comments related to regarding the situation and the necessity to have urgent action against the junta military, and including imposing sanctions, targeted sanctions, declaration of no-fly zones, and then it is apparent that military junta has disobeyed the ASEAN 5-point consensus, and then there is a like Maumar mentioned, alternative scenario needed to address these situations. So perhaps while waiting, I would like to ask just one questions related to the ASEAN 5-point consensus itself. Do you think the 5-point consensus has failed? And is it still worth it to pushing for ASEAN community to push and to reiterate the ASEAN 5-point consensus in our advocacy? And if not, what are the actual alternatives that we can think of? Like Maumar mentioned, perhaps I can go to Makinomar first about this, and you can also mention about you're mentioning no-fly zone and what it is and what is important to our press audience here as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Anon. I think, the 5-point consensus, I mean, I think it's already, the time has already proved again and again that there is no possibility to move forward without other, options on the plate. I think we have to put other options on the table and move forward with those options. Of course, it is a consensus decision. So yes, as the ASEAN, as a regional bloc, to keep up with that and keep trying, okay, that's fine. But what that's fine mean, like, what I'm trying to say is, it is not working. So without trying other options, then just keep doing this when the military has absolute disregard to honor these 5 points. So that to me is just, it's delay in the time. So that's why I'm proposing this. For example, immediately, what the people are very vulnerable is the airstrikes. And the Myanmar military cannot use the airstrikes, cannot launch the airstrikes if they don't have the jet fuel, or if they don't have these, like Iran and Serbia and Russia flying in with or like, coming with the ships to load all of these military weapons. So what if the ASEAN member states individually or even coordinatedly declared no like a no-fly zone, or ban all of these foreign aircrafts, including using the transit of the airports, and also also banning those ships using the maritime boundaries to enter with those military weapons that are killing our people. I think these are the individual countries, can do that at their own political will and decision. I think that could be another one. Just give it you the one example. But also we've been calling for, together with you, of course, we've been calling for this coordinated humanitarian intervention. I mean, let's face the reality. ASEAN alone cannot handle Myanmar crisis, regardless of whether the military will respond here and there or back out again or not. The reality is the crisis has multiple fronts. The magnitude is so high. So ASEAN alone cannot resolve the crisis in Myanmar. So the best is to get the UN, particularly get the Security Council to act and have this commission these joint effort together for what we will call as humanitarian intervention. And I use again the word intervention is because without such intervention, it's not possible. Yeah, thank you, Hanon.
Thank you very much, Maomor. Other panelists would like to jump in and answer as well on their thoughts on ASEAN 5-point consensus.
Yeah, Mas Hanung, I think I want to share some of my views. Yeah, I think the 5 consensus so far is the most progressive statements of ASEAN. Yeah, but the problem is whether each member of ASEAN then can stick on that and use it to be in the operational mechanisms in dealings with the junta military, like what happens with Hun Sen's right now. It is clear that Hun Sen somehow violates the 5 principles of the 5 consensus of ASEAN. Therefore, if we want to move forward, actually, there is a hope, yeah, if the 5 principles will be implemented and respected by each members of ASEAN. And a second, I think somehow it is the problems also with the rotations of leaderships in ASEAN. When Hun Sen then went there, even though he claims that it is the on behalf of the Cambodia's leaders, somehow then he tried to use that visit as the ASEAN also. And it is clear that actually we cannot hope Hun Sen to uphold the 5 principles of the consensus here. So there are some inputs also that, oh my God, we must wait until Indonesia take the lead again, so we can move forward for the resolutions for Myanmar. So yeah, we have problems here, but we still believe whenever we stick on the 5 consensus, I think things will be better. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bueva. We can get back to the Indonesia's role on the chairship later on. But before moving to these 2 questions in the Q&A box, I would like to mention that as we are live in Facebook as well, we are also receiving solidarity message from our friends in Thailand, and they're conveying our solidarity for people in Myanmar as well by Facebook chat. And now we have 2 questions here. The first one is from Rosalind Ratana to the panelists. How can we move forward from the current stagnant situation when ASEAN leadership is still unwilling to engage directly with the National Unity Government and its representatives. And then the second one is from Jan Rousseau. What is the situation within Tatmadaw? Is there an internal debate about the violence of the repression and the future of the regime, which is seeing its revenues collapse? So I guess it's related to what currently happening with several oil and gas companies decided to move out from the Myanmar. Maybe for the first questions, since related to the engagement with the NUG, I can direct it to Ubo, Ambassador Ubo Latin first. What if the ASEAN leader is still unwilling to engage directly with the NUG and its representative? What we can do? Ubo, you're still on mute. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Hanan. This is an important question. So from our side, we are already mentioned that we are willing, committed, and to work with, ready to work with the ASEAN leadership as well as all these, people or civil society within the region, so that we keep our parts, keeping communicating with the ASEAN leadership, sharing our concern and frustration, everything as come from our people, because as a government of the people, we are sharing exactly. That is why we are sending even to Chairman Hun Sen when they assumed the rotating chairmanship, that since he mentioned his planned visit to Myanmar, our NUG government sent this to reconsider this business, because it will rent, or it will lend the legitimacy to the junta, who already failed to cooperate with the ASEAN. So not to underestimate. So from our point of view is we will keep trying, but at the same time, that is why we want like-minded country and strong democracy like Indonesia and other like-minded country to speak up, to work with us, and gradually it will lead the ASEAN as a whole, if they want to keep their consensus position or principle together. And if there was a fruitfulness working with the NUG, it will be more and more in the interest of the ASEAN as a whole. So that is why Indonesia role or other like-minded country role is very crucial. At the same time, the role of the civil society organization and all the other advocacy group, collective or individual initiative, talking to respective government, it is also important to change the pattern of the game.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ubo Latin, for the response. Others who would like to respond on the questions or the question related to the situation within Tatmadaw. Is there an internal debate about the violence of the repressions and the future of the regime, which is seeing its revenue collapse?
Well, I can respond. I mean, this is a very secretive entity. Yeah, they have lived. It's like a state within the state that they have built. But from what we see from outside, from like our observation, what we can see is, first of all, for example, at least 2,000 soldiers, not actually, even the rank and file, some higher level positions have defected and joined in the people's movement. Whereas about, I think about 4,000 or at least 4,000 or so police personnel, also including the high levels, have joined. They defected and joined them People's Revolution as well. So from that, this is the first time again, this kind of crack happened in that institution, which is also quite a telling. I mean, you listen to these who defected, and they tell you like at least 90% within them, the military don't agree with this coup attempt. But of course, they know that if they are to leave, then it is a treason. Yeah. So they, not only for them but the whole family. In many cases, we have learned that high-level generals within the military, the whole family is sort of like in a way of like a confined to the house. We can kind of even call it more or less sort of under house arrest to some extent, right? So because like when they go out, they have to like sign to in order to go out. Their children have to sign, things like that. But also there are some things, for example, like an Air Force chief was actually publicly, the military said the Air Force chief committed corruption and therefore they sack him. But then, internally, we know this is not really the corruption, not in this kind of time. It's also quite obviously, some of these top officials are not in agreement of what all these violence is happening. Yeah. But to what extent that crack is going to come bigger, to the point that, that the Myanmar will be toppled or, brought down within, is something that we need to keep working for it. And that actually this revenue, the revenue financial flow from the international companies or corporations such as like Total and like Chevron, especially particularly the oil companies, yeah, with the big amount of revenue that will be flowing into the military's hand. If we can stop, if we can block these money flow, and like all of these the companies bankrolling the junta can stop, then we can really that the pressure will be on the right nerve. We will be pressing the right nerve for the many of these actors within the military will be also responding and acting. And that's exactly what we need. Not only that we want to stop the financial flow, so that the military cannot buy more military arms and weapons to kill the people, but also with that, that is also going to, we will see more crack within, that they will actually, that give them the military, the other generals to think more than twice of what they are doing, what is their future if this violence carries on. So yeah, we need the pressure from all corners. And like one of the key pressure points is to cut the financial flow to them.
Thank you very much, Myanmar, for the response. We are now at the end of the session of 1.5 hour press briefing, but I think I would like to invite each of the speakers to give a closing remarks and also to wrap up, to share their insight about, because we're mentioning about Indonesia is going to be the chair of ASEAN in 2023. And it's very crucial given the strong and progressive stance of Indonesia at the moment. But what actually can Indonesia can do immediately and can be prepared from this year to prepare their chairship in 2023 in relation to Myanmar? So I would like to hear each of your perspective, also closing remarks your side as well. Maybe I'll do it reverse order from Ibu Eva. Ibu, you are still on mute.
Okay, thank you, Mas Hanung. I think you have started to open the discussion again by mentioning your questions in the end. Yeah, but it was the hopes and also the frustration signs of people. Why don't other individual members of ASEAN can do also the same things like Indonesia, Malaysia, and also Singapore, and later I think Filipina also joins here. So somehow we witnessing the split of ASEAN, and I do believe if then these groups can develop or build the strategy to also show a look, even though some of ASEANs are there in the different sides, we are still remains upholding the five consensus of the ASEANs that we have already stated some times ago. And these four countries somehow can make and create a space, a new hope for other parties to also to do the same things. Yeah, so it's important for Indonesia and other three countries to show their political positions that we are not we are still in this initial positions, that for solving the Myanmar situations, let's do the five consensus. So that's my closing, and also to answer that challenge, yeah, from you. Thank you, Mas.
Thank you, Ibu Eva. Hannah, Miss Hannah, is there any final remarks and aspiration of what Indonesian government can do for the upcoming chairship in 2023?
Yes, we have big hope to Indonesian government, and then it is sure that I'm going to share back that how the Indonesian community, especially CSOs, are supporting us to Burma. You know? So especially in the Ukrainian community, I'm sharing back that how the Indonesian community is supporting. So I would like to ask the Indonesia, not only the government or the CSOs and people, to keep supporting us and pushing that to show that the very strong leadership role of Indonesian government in the ASEAN to stop the terrorist military action to the civilians. So each activities that the Indonesian government need to take is already mentioned in every speeches and statements, and then Indonesian governments also well known about the needs of of Burma. You know, so I hope that Indonesian government will be clearly show up its ability to stop the brutal terrorist of Burma, the military, soon. So this is my last message and my hope to the Indonesian government in coming year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Hannah. Maumar?
Thank you, Anong. I also would like to call on the Indonesian government to really take the leadership with the concrete actions to respond this further deepening crisis as a matter of extreme urgency. This is the only way to save Myanmar people is with the actions. And I think Indonesian government can actually have allies, like I said, like-minded allies from region and from international to work on that concrete action. And the people of Myanmar are with you and looking for your leadership. As 1 year passed, the junta is unable to take over the country. It is so important to note. They cannot get legitimacy also because our people are not allowing them. Various ways of our people's defiance against this junta continues to remain so strong, so firm, in spite of all of these hardship and attacks and violence that they are facing. Spring Revolution has revived the nationwide activism to address justice and accountability for all. It's important to remember, for all, including for the Rohingya people, and to end the root causes of the people suffering, that is the military dictatorship. So the solidarity among our people from all background for humanity and empathy have been across board. The people of Myanmar are risking, especially the young generation, are risking everything for the protection of human rights, for democracy and peace. And these groups need firm support, both politically and materially, from the ASEAN, from Indonesia and their neighbors to topple this military junta once and for all, for not only for this generation, for the future generations, and achieve federal democracy. So this is the first time our country has got the most largest opportunity for the nation building, as this Spring Revolution brought everybody together. And young generation in particular are so determined. So I really, really look forward to Indonesian leadership, Indonesian government and the people's leadership to achieve Myanmar people's aspiration for a new Myanmar that is a federal democratic union. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Maumar. Last but not least, His Excellency Ambassador Ugo Latin. Ambassador, you're still on.
Again. So, yeah, thank you for this important closing remark. So, I'm totally agree with other speakers, and this is a very crucial time for Indonesian government and Indonesian parliament or Indonesian leadership to show their leadership, capability, within the ASEAN as well as within the region as a stronger democracy in the region. So as we mentioned, when we meet at the first time I met with the CSO, we have a historical relation, mutual relation between the Burmese independence struggle and Indonesian independence struggle in the past. So when Indonesia are in need, Burmese as a freshly gained independence country, we keep our solidarity with Indonesia, and we hope this is the time, and we would like to appeal or request to Indonesia to look back the history and to take the responsible leadership role in the region, not only for Burma issue, but also to keep the principle of ASEAN, as I mentioned in the chapter 1 of the ASEAN purposes, and the purposes said number 7 is to promote and protect democracy, human rights, and individual freedoms, so that ASEAN working with, at the same time, ASEAN principle is to engage with all party concerned. So ASEAN or the Indonesia can take example to engage with the all party concerned, including our ethnic organization, studied with the NUG and CRPH and NUCC, because it is not committing crime. It is walking from the right side of the aisle and for the freedom, justice, and democracy in a country, member country of ASEAN, so that we want to see the strong and appropriate leadership and immediate leadership of the ASEAN. At the same time, I totally agree with the whoever is that, if to gain the consensus within the whole ASEAN, like-minded country can work together in collective leadership, speaking out what they believe and how they can help a crisis in Burma as an example. Otherwise, one of our people tell on the Facebook I saw a couple of days ago is, if ASEAN would like to see Burma like North Korea or like South Korea, he said, if they want to see another country like South Korea, ASEAN need to take action now. Otherwise, Burma will become like a North Korea in our region. So that for me is that we want to keep working with ASEAN leadership, in particular, all the like-minded countries in the bloc. We fully understand it collectively or bilaterally, they will take all these necessary action and listen to the people closer, and then work with the closer with all these, NUG, CRPs, NUCCs, and all the civil ethnic organization. They will see that, as Omar mentioned, we believe that with or without help from the outside world, we are already determined and committed to win. But we want our neighbor, our leadership in the region to act appropriately. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Ugo Latin. Fatia sent her regard because he couldn't join until the end. But I guess on behalf of Fatia and the co-organizer here, Ajar, Forum Asia, Contrast, and CSOs in Indonesia as well, I would say that it is in the commitment of Indonesian CSOs to keep voicing the concerns of the people of Myanmar, and to keep voicing this as well to our government, to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and to President Joko Widodo as well, to take progressive stance, because people in Myanmar cannot can no longer wait, cannot accept more statements or consensus. They need real actions. So it is a strategic way from the CSO Indonesia to keep opening the discussions with our own government here, so that the position of Indonesia will be aligned with what is actually envisioned with people in Myanmar. So thank you so much for the distinguished panelists that have been joining us here. So before closing the press briefing, there's some announcement in the chat box from ASEAN Youth Forum. They're releasing a youth statement and to mobilize the youth in ASEAN as well. So if you'd like to see the statement and to endorse, there's a link in the chat box. And then Civicus is also launching a briefing paper with civics monitoring on the situation of Myanmar that we have documented. Would be great to see and to be utilized for our advocacy purposes as well. And last but not least, Forum Asia has launched the campaign page, hashtag Solidarity for Myanmar. You may visit this page, as well as there will be more updated content to be uploaded later on. So rest assured that this media briefing will not only stop here, but we will keep continuing voicing and surveying the issues of people in Myanmar in our best capacity. So to close the press briefing today, I would like to invite all panelists here to join me in a group picture with a 3-finger salute to show our solidarity. For those who are comfortable to show their camera, I would be happy to have them. Maybe Forum Asia team can help me to take the picture.
Yes, I will take the picture. 1, 2, 3. One more time for clear. I'm going to save it first. 1, 2, 3. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody.
I would like to close.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for distinguished speakers and participants for staying with us today. And